Pirelli's carefully worded statement on the reasons behind Stroll and Verstappen's tyre failures in Baku may not have explicitly blamed teams, but the strength of the FIA's response tells us that they might not have been playing 100% by the rules. The only requirements of teams up to now was a limit on tyre temperatures in the blankets and their starting pressures when tyres are still fitted. But that still left room for teams to employ interesting tactics once those checks had taken place. If a team could drop pressures below the recommendation by the time the car left the pits, and then managed to find a way of them not rising too much out on track as the tyres warmed up, it could fully comply with the rules and yet not be at a pressure level where Pirelli would normally expect or advise them to be. Now, teams aren't likely to own up to how they've been doing this, but here's what the FIA says is no longer allowed. Removing the tyre blankets early. The most obvious way for teams to play around with tyre pressures is with temperature, for if the air in the tyre is heated up, it will then expand to increase the pressure to pass the pre-running checks. Then, if they're left to cool, the air will contract again and the tyre pressures drop down to a level that's better for car performance because there will be more surface area between the tyre and the track. Many years ago, the FIA moved to stop teams doing this through dramatically heating up their tyres, which is why there's now a limit on how hot the tyres can be heated in the tyre blankets. One way teams can do this would be to remove tyre blankets from the cars in the garage well before they intend to go out on track. And this is something that Lewis Hamilton highlighted in Monaco when he told Sky F1 that Red Bull had done this in Spain. From the French Grand Prix, such activity will no longer be permitted, with teams told that the removal of blankets prior to the cars getting ready to leave the garage will be interpreted as them trying to cool the tyres. So teams are going to need to justify a valid reason for any delayed release of over 30 seconds or frequent delayed release. In a similar vein, the FIA restricts teams from using tyre blankets for too long, or playing innocent over a blanket control reading that gives a lower temperature than the tyres at. From France, teams will no longer be able to heat the tyres for a lengthy period of time. They can now only be heated when they are intended to be used in the following session. Teams are not allowed to keep their tyre blankets running overnight either, or above temperature, so that when tyres are fitted in the morning, they're already roasting away better than teams who might have only just switched theirs on. The FIA says tyre blankets must now be physically disconnected except for a period allowed by Pirelli, and they must make sure that temperature displays of all the control boxes in use are switched on and easily visible. While the teams have always had to use tyre pressure gauges calibrated by Pirelli and sealed by the FIA, that in theory has not stopped them making use of any leeway in the readings to push the tyre pressure margins. Small variances can creep into the system when checks are made, and previously teams knew that if there was any small discrepancy with a set of tyres, they would be allowed to inflate them. So there was nothing to lose by pushing the limits. Now though, the FIA is getting tough and will not allow any additional tolerances that result in the tyres being outside the prescriptions. And any team found to be outside the limits will still obviously be asked to inflate the tyres more because they'll be too low, but cases of large and/or systematic discrepancies or repeat offences will be reported to the stewards. Now, another way for tyre pressure to be changed is through the use of special gases or the moisture content as they are being inflated. And this can potentially change the way that temperature affects the expansion of air inside the tyre. But now, such behaviour, you guessed it, no longer allowed. The FIA also reminded teams that they must follow Article 12.5.1 of the technical regulations at all times, which states that any modification of treatments such as cutting, grooving, application of solvent or softeners is prohibited. Basically, stop messing with the tyres, guys. So what did you make of Pirelli's findings? Do you think the teams could be at fault here, or does the buck stop with Pirelli and the FIA? Let us know in the comments below and make sure you're subscribed for more videos like this one. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time.